A little disclaimer before I start. I would like to say that in no way, shape, or form I am a classically trained musician. I'm much more of a dilettante. So if you want a account of Feldman's work with more accuracy, please visit websites from Classical Nerds and of Samuel Andreev. I will leave the link down below. Although this is the case with me, I think I have a nice story that can relate to my naiveness and my liking of Feldman's work. He told a story that his teacher was a guy named Stefan Volpe, which was much attuned to socialist values, much caring for how the music made would affect society, once pointed out to him across the street to a random guy crossing the street. He pointed out to this guy and said, well, you gotta think, what would this music do for this guy, or something like that. And the random guy he was pointing to was actually Jackson Pollock. So there is a redoubling here which I find very amusing. First of all, I think that Feldman did his works mostly thinking of painters, especially painters he knew, and he was very interested in plastic arts. But in a way, the music that he does also, with my example, reach the common guy on the street. I remember that the piece that I'm going to talk today, which is String Quartet number 2, saved me from a really bad day. I mean, I had this weird day which I had to go to all these state institutions to, do some forms, take some papers all day long, and was very workful, bureaucratic, boring day. And the only thing I had on my, I believe at the time was an iPod, was this piece. So I basically heard the whole 6 hours of it, because yes, it's 6 hours long. During that day, I make a vow in the beginning of the day that I would not pause the piece whatsoever, would go on living my day with this piece playing on my phones. And this is possible because pieces of Feldman are much slow, are very quiet also. And they're also very arrhythmic, or if there is a rhythm, one gets that slow, I think it just collapses. And it's not really, I think he wanted to do something really cold, but I don't hear like that. So, the thing for me is that because there is no development in his pieces, it is what I said, he was thinking of painting. He was basically soundscaping. He was transforming music, which is a time art, an art which deals with time, into a space. And I think that inverts a lot of our prejudices to time, because we have many. We actually basically spatialize time all the time. So we think of time as a line, we think of a time as a movement on the clock, but we do not do the opposite thinking, which is much more counterintuitive and interesting. So I think that this Bergsonian character of Feldman brings him closer to painting in a way, but with merely music. So he had this vision that this piece was a whole, and that the parts didn't matter. And I think he also knew that they were going to be paid attention, ignored from time to time. So it's like a background music, but not really. And that's what's so interesting about it. It's not really like ambient music. It can get on the nerves of some people, but it is, I think, very, very pleasing, at least for me. And as I said, is upwards of 6 hours long, this piece. As I am not classically trained, I cannot say to you which performance is best, and I don't think with a piece this long much people can say it. There is a Flux performance, Flux Quartet, there is another by Charles Ives Ensemble, there's another, I don't think Kronos Quartet actually recorded it, but anyway, there are many versions. And because of this duration is also one very extreme piece. And the paradox here is that we think of extreme music pieces by them being loud and annoying in this way, in pushing us to the limits and really just clogging up our senses and the senses of the performer. But it's not the case here at all. You know, it's extreme because to play 6 hours long some type of music, you gotta have some big endurance, especially psychological ones. And the audience to receive 6 hours of music also has to be ready for it. The whole idea of the setting is a nightmare for this. We become our perception just collapses sometimes with something this long, and with paying attention all the time to it. It's something that I think I already said before, that time became a problem in somewhat in modern composition, and I find here an interesting parallel between two artists which are completely opposite in many senses, Feldman and Zappa. Their ideas of time had much influence on what pieces they are doing, and both, curiously, were influenced by Edgar Varese. Of course, here the problem is much more related to stamina, to the psychological factors. It's very unlike Zappa in this way. Their time is much more of a toy for him. It's much more an achievement of manipulation, of taking something that was made in one time and pushing to another, and just fitting it in another piece. So, but again, we have the thing that I said. I don't think I said about that. I think I said about Jacques Liebzeit, which was, he was a Deleuzian drummer. Where Deleuze has this book called Difference and Repetition, where the basic arguments that there is no difference between difference and repetition. That repetition is kind of engenders difference. So, for what I know, it's very hard to perceive it, but there are many repetitive phrases inside Feldman's work, and they are made in indeterminate ways. Also, the repetition of it is just because it is a string quartet. It's that basic four instruments, two violins, a viola, and a cello, and these type of timbre get through you. And he was very much attuned to the differences between notes itself, like middle C and high C is not the same note for him. So he's a very he engenders a lot of difference through the repetitive patterns and repetitive ideas, actually. So it is a thing that I think he had much in common with painters, and also with his love for Turkish rugs. You know, The weaving of the Turkish rug is very repetitive, but very symmetrical. But it has a difference with it. Two Turkish rugs are like each other. There's always some minimal difference between them, which is in the hands of the artist, and now in the hands not only of the composer but also the performance, and moreover of the audience, because when you listen to it, because of the time dilation, to use incorrectly a term, you distort what he's doing, or what the performers are doing. So it's a very, and I want to be clear here that his repetition is no minimalistic. It's not that idiom. It's completely different from works from Steve Reich or Philip Glass. It's not at all like that. And the thing for him is that he thought, and I think that he knew that he could engender much difference just enlarging his timescape. So he avoided in his late works anything short. There is a video of him on YouTube that he says that he doesn't need, we don't need actually 20-minute pieces. So his pieces in the end of his career are very, very long. It goes for 6 hours, 4 hours. But in any way, it is a album I recommend listening. I don't know how much people will deal with an album of 6 hours. Maybe you have to do something really boring for 6 hours and you just put it on. But yeah, I recommend the listening. And if you don't want to listen but you want to know the story, I'll leave the links down below for it. So bye bye.